Rain fell hard over the dark countryside. The mud path outside the small farmhouse had turned into thick brown soup. Most people stayed inside, warm near their fires. But Eli was still working in his tool shed. The sound of thunder shook the sky, and then something else, a strange, soft cry, barely heard over the wind. Eli wiped his hands and stepped outside, holding a lantern. The rain hit his face as he looked around. There, near his fence, he saw something or someone. He walked closer, careful with each step through the slippery mud. Then he froze. It was a woman, lying face down in the dirt. Her body was shaking, her skin almost hidden by thick layers of wet mud. Her clothes were torn, not from this world. Her hair was soaked and tangled with leaves. Eli stepped closer, his voice calm. "Hey, can you hear me?" She didn't move at first. Then, slowly, her hand twitched, trying to lift herself. But she collapsed again. Eli crouched and turned her over gently. That's when he saw her face. And he knew instantly she wasn't human. Her eyes were closed, her cheeks thin. Her skin had a deep violet glow beneath the mud. 2 faint scars ran down her neck, and her lips were cracked from cold and thirst. She was breathing, but just barely. Eli looked around, then carefully picked her up in his arms. She was so light, like a half-starved animal. He brought her inside the house, laid her on the old couch near the fire, and grabbed a towel. "She needs help," he whispered to himself. He gently wiped the mud from her face. Each stroke revealed more of her alien features, small ridges on her brow, delicate marks on her skin like faded tattoos. She had been through something terrible. Eli didn't ask questions. He filled a basin with warm water and started cleaning her arms and hands. That's when he saw bruises, red and purple, all over her wrists and ankles. Someone had chained her. His hands tightened, but he forced himself to stay calm. She was still unconscious, shivering and mumbling in a language he couldn't understand. Then, her eyes opened, slightly glowing, faintly golden, locked onto his hide. She whispered, then passed out again. Eli stared at her, heart beating fast. What did she mean? Who was she hiding from? The next morning, news spread through the nearby village. Old farmer Eli had brought something home, a creature. Maybe dangerous, maybe cursed. 2 neighbors came by, knocking at his door. "You better hand her over," one said. "Things like that don't belong here." Eli stood firm, blocking the doorway. "She's hurt. She's not a threat," he said. "She's an alien." The other man replied, "You don't know what she's done." "She's also a person," Eli said sharply, "and she's staying here." The men left, grumbling. But Eli knew this wasn't over. He closed the door and turned back toward the couch. The alien woman was sitting up now, weakly holding the blanket around herself. Her eyes watched him closely, with both fear and confusion. He walked over slowly, knelt beside her, and offered a piece of bread and water. She hesitated, then took it with shaking hands. "I'm Eli," he said, pointing to himself. She looked at him, then down at her food. No words came from her lips, but tears slipped from her eyes. She didn't know if she was safe here. She didn't know if she could trust him. But this was the first time in a long while someone had treated her like she mattered. Outside, the sky remained dark, but inside the small home, the fire burned warm. And for the first time since she had collapsed in the mud, the alien woman closed her eyes and slept without fear. The next morning, the fire had died down and the house was quiet. Eli stirred from the chair where he'd fallen asleep, his old joints cracking as he stood up. He looked over at the couch and froze. The alien woman was gone. He rushed to the door and opened it, heart racing, but then he heard something behind him, a soft clatter, like metal against wood. He turned around slowly. She was crouched near the kitchen shelves, one hand gripping a metal pan like a weapon. The other braced on the floor to steady herself. Her eyes were wide, wild, like a cornered animal. She didn't speak, but the message was clear. She didn't know this place, didn't trust him, didn't even know if she was safe. Eli raised both hands and stayed still. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're not in danger here?" Her eyes narrowed, and she made a strange noise. Something between a growl and a sob. Her whole body trembled. But not from cold this time. It was fear. He pointed slowly to the water pitcher on the table and then to the couch. "No chains here," he said gently. "No cages." The woman blinked, her grip on the pan loosening just a little. Then her knees buckled and she collapsed onto the floor. Eli rushed forward and caught her before she hit her head. She didn't fight this time, just cried. Low and broken sounds coming from her throat. He carried her back to the couch, wrapped her in the blanket again, and sat quietly nearby for a long while. They said nothing. Then, very quietly, she spoke a word not in English, but it came through the translator device that dangled weakly around her neck. "Why?" "Help." Eli looked at her and shrugged. "Because no one else would," he answered. "And you looked like you needed someone?" She stared at him, her eyes searching his face like she didn't believe what she heard, like kindness was some foreign concept long forgotten. Later, he tried to offer her food again. This time, she took it without hesitation. Each bite was slow, careful, like she was waiting for someone to snatch it away. Eli noticed her fingers burned, with skin missing in places and long cuts running up her arms. He didn't ask what happened, not yet. But something told him it was worse than he could imagine. As the day went on, she remained mostly silent. Eli worked in the corner of the room, fixing a broken lantern, giving her space. She watched him quietly, her golden eyes alert, but no longer afraid. That evening, when the sun dipped behind the hills, she finally stood up on her own. Her legs shook, and she nearly fell. But she steadied herself on the wall. Eli stepped forward, ready to help, but she raised a hand, signaling she wanted to do it herself. He nodded and stepped back. She walked to the window and looked out at the fields. The wind moved through the tall grass, and she breathed in deep like she hadn't tasted fresh air in years. Then she turned back to him and pointed to herself. "Mira," she said quietly. Eli smiled. "Mira." He repeated, "Nice to meet you." She nodded once, and for the first time, her lips curved just a little. Not a full smile, but close. That night, when Eli went to his bedroom, he left the door open just in case she needed anything. But Myra didn't call out. She sat on the couch, staring into the fire, and whispered strange words in her own language, words full of sadness, hope, and something else, memory, maybe, or a promise to someone long gone, outside, far in the distance. A silent ship hovered above the clouds, invisible to human radar, its scanners quietly sweeping the area. Something or someone was still looking for her, and time was running out. But for now, in this quiet house filled with warmth and gentle kindness, Myra was finally safe, for now. 2 days passed, and the rumors had already reached every corner of the nearby village. Eli didn't go into town often, but when he did, he felt the weight of their stares at the supply store. The woman behind the counter handed him his change. Without a word, her eyes flicking to the bag of bandages and food he carried. Outside, a group of farmers stopped talking when he passed. One of them whispered just loud enough, "He's hiding that thing in his house." Eli didn't respond. He just walked back to his truck, jaw tight, back at the farm. Myra was sitting in the sun with a shawl wrapped around her shoulders. She still didn't speak much, but she watched the birds, the sky, and the way the wind moved through the wheat. She looked tired, always tired, but more alive than she had. When he first found her, sometimes she would hum to herself low. strange notes from a language he didn't understand. Eli never interrupted that evening. As they ate together at the small wooden table, she glanced up at him. Her translator buzzed softly before her words came through. Why not? Give me away. Eli looked at her, surprised by the question. He set down his spoon and leaned back in his chair. You're not a stray animal, he said. You're someone, even if others don't see it yet. She looked down, her fingers curling around the edge of the bowl. Eli noticed the tension in her shoulders. The way her eyes flicked toward the window, she didn't feel safe. Not really. Not yet. That night, a knock came at the door. Slow and heavy, Eli opened it to find 3 village men standing outside. One with a shotgun over his shoulder. You've got a guest, said the first man. We think it's time she left. Eli didn't move from the doorway. She's not bothering anyone, he said. Just trying to survive. She's not one of us, the second man added. And someone's been stealing livestock? You think she's eating cows? Eli said, half amused, half angry. Look at her, she barely eats soup. The third man stepped forward. If something bad happens, it's on you, he warned. You've been told they left without a fight, but Eli knew this was just the start. The next morning, Mira wasn't on the couch. Panic filled Eli's chest as he searched the house. Then the barn. Then the back of the fields. He found her near the edge of the forest, sitting on the ground with her hands in the dirt. She had drawn shape-strange patterns and loops with her fingers. When she heard his footsteps, she didn't look up. I will go, she said, translator crackling. They hate me, Eli knelt down beside her. They don't know you, he said softly. They're afraid of what they don't understand. I bring trouble, she replied, her voice low. It always follows. Eli sighed and sat in the grass beside her. He stared at the shapes she had drawn. Maybe they were maps, or memories, or prayers. Whatever they were fading fast in the wind, just like she was. Then let it come, he said, finally. I'd rather face trouble with someone than live in peace, knowing I let her suffer alone. For the first time, Myra looked at him fully, not with fear, but with something softer, something searching. She didn't smile, but her eyes shimmered in the sunlight like they might someday. Far above, in the sky, hidden by clouds, something metallic moved slowly through orbit. Its scanners paused, locked. On the land coordinates of Eli's farm, a small light blinked red and a signal was sent. The village feared what she was, but those coming next wanted her for a different reason, and they were already on their way. Eli knew something had changed the moment the birds stopped singing. It was a clear afternoon, but the air felt strange, thick, and heavy. Like before a storm, Mira was inside, washing her hands in the basin, her eyes distant, her body slow. She had been quieter than usual, as if something unseen had started to weigh her down again. Eli had just stepped outside to chop wood when he heard it, a low hum, not from the ground, but from the sky. He looked up and froze. There was no ship in sight, but the clouds were pulsing with light, like something was trying to stay hidden. He dropped the axe and ran inside. Myra looked up sharply as he entered, her eyes wide and alert. Before he even spoke, she felt it too. They've found me, she whispered, the translator barely catching her voice. Eli didn't ask how she knew. He grabbed his old rifle from the closet, handed her a jacket, and pulled a hidden panel loose from the barn floor. A small underground space, lined with dirt walls and storage crates meant for storms. Not war. I won't let them take you, he said, his voice steady. Mira hesitated, then climbed down into the shelter, but before he could follow, she stopped him. She held out her arm, sliding back the sleeve to reveal a mark burned into her skin long ago. A strange emblem, circular, surrounded by alien symbols and numbers. What is that? Eli asked, crouching beside her. Her lips parted, her voice flat. Property, she said. I was bred in a genetic facility, meant to carry code inside. I was a test. Eli stared at the mark, his stomach turning. He traced a finger near. "It but didn't touch. Someone did this to you," he said. "Not who you are, just what they tried to make you." Myra looked down, silent, then touched her chest. "But it's still in me," she whispered. "That's what they want." Outside, the hum returned, louder this time, more focused, more aware. The trees at the edge of the field swayed even. Without wind, Eli climbed out of the shelter and closed the panel. Covering it with crates, he stood in the barn with his rifle, heart pounding, eyes fixed on the doorway. Minutes passed like hours, then something stepped into view tall. Armored, and not human, its face was hidden behind a black helmet, and its movements were smooth, calculated. The intruder stopped in the doorway and scanned the barn silently. Eli stood his ground, gripping the rifle tighter. "You're not welcome here," Eli said, his voice firm. The figure didn't answer. It raised one hand, activating a floating screen that displayed Mira's image and her code. "She doesn't belong to you," Eli growled. The figure finally spoke, a metallic voice. "She is not yours to keep." Eli raised his weapon, but before he could fire, the intruder turned and disappeared into the shadows. Not gone, just waiting, watching. Eli didn't sleep that night. He sat by the barn door, rifle in his lap, while Mira stayed hidden below in the silence. Her voice rose from the floor, soft and cracked. "I dreamed of being something else," she said. "Not a number, not an experiment. Just someone real." "You are," Eli replied, staring into the night, "and I'll prove it. Even if the whole galaxy says otherwise." But deep in his chest, Eli knew this wasn't over. The enemy didn't come to take Mira back. Not yet. They came to confirm she was still alive, and now that they knew, they'd return next time. They wouldn't just knock. Eli had never seen Mira angry before, not like this. She stood in the center of his kitchen, hands clenched, the translator around her neck sparking as it struggled to keep up with the surge of emotion. The power had flickered out minutes ago. Lights gone, generator dead, and outside the wind was wrong again, to quiet, to still. But Mira wasn't afraid anymore. "They don't just want me back," she said, her voice tight and sharp. "They want what's inside me." Eli leaned against the wall, wiping the sweat from his brow. He could feel it too, the tension pressing on his bones. He wanted to help her, but he didn't even understand what she was, not completely. She had told him bits and pieces, a failed project, genetic tech, something unstable, but never the whole truth. So he asked, quietly, "What exactly is inside you?" Mira hesitated, then slowly stepped forward and raised her hand. At first, nothing happened. Then the air shimmered around her fingertips, and small blue lights began to float from her skin, like fireflies made of data. They put something in. "Me," she said, "a living code, ancient, part machine, part energy." Eli stared at the glowing patterns now forming in the air symbols, rotating slowly, pulsing with meaning he couldn't grasp. It was beautiful and terrifying. "I never wanted it," she whispered, "but when I got older, it woke up. And they locked me away." The lights faded, and her shoulders dropped like the weight of it all was too much. Eli didn't say a word. He just walked over and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're not a machine," he said softly. "You're a person, Mira." A faint knock echoed from the barn. Gentle this time, to gentle. Eli grabbed his rifle again, but Mira stopped him. "I need to try," she said. "If I run forever, I'll never be free." He looked into her eyes, then nodded. Slowly, they stepped outside together, the air cold against their skin. The sky above them pulsed with faint blue clouds, something cloaked. Watching then, from the trees, a figure stepped forward, not the same one as before, but similar. Its voice was softer and its helmet thinner. Mira unit, it said. You've matured beyond prediction. Myra didn't flinch. My name is Myra, she answered. And I'm not going back. The figure tilted its head. You carried dangerous design, it said. You threaten entire systems if left uncontained, Eli. Raise the rifle, but Mira stepped in front of him. No more hiding, she said. The lights returned. Rising from her arms again, faster this time, brighter, the figure backed away. Its scanners blinking red, warning signs lighting its chest plate. Mira held out both hands and whispered something Eli couldn't hear. The figure dropped to one knee, systems shutting down, its body locked in stasis. Eli blinked, shocked. I shut it down, she said. Not with force, but with command. She looked at her hands, still glowing, still trembling. I'm not just a test anymore, she said slowly. I'm the key to something bigger. And now that the enemy had seen what she could do, they wouldn't stop. At scouting, they'd come in full force. But this time, Mira wasn't going to run. Neither was Eli. The crash site still burned deep in the woods. Flames licked the sky while the wreckage pulsed with dying energy. Eli had never seen anything like it. Twisted black metal, glowing with blue veins that cracked open like broken glass. He didn't approach. He didn't need to, because Mira stood at the edge of the field, barefoot, wind brushing through her tangled hair, her eyes fixed on the distant smoke. She didn't speak. She didn't blink. Eli stood beside her in silence, holding a blanket he'd brought for her. She didn't seem cold. She seemed finished. I thought I'd feel free, she whispered after a long time, but all I feel is empty. Eli didn't try to fix that. Some wounds weren't meant to be covered up with soft words. He just placed the blanket around her shoulders and stayed close. That night, Mira didn't sleep. She sat beside the fire while Eli dozed in the chair, her mind replaying every moment. The cage, the hunters, the voice in her head that once told her she was nothing more than a tool. But Eli's voice? It was the first that ever called her by a name, not a number. It was the first voice that didn't flinch when she glowed, didn't run when she broke things, didn't call her dangerous, just lost. At dawn, Mira took one of Eli's old knives and walked to the side of the house. Eli found her carving something into the wooden frame symbols, strange but graceful, glowing faintly as she cut. What's that? He asked, still waking up. She turned toward him. Eyes soft. My name, she said. Not the one they gave me. The one I chose. He stepped closer and saw it now. A symbol like a spiral wrapped in flame, drawn from the language of her people. She placed her hand over it and whispered something. A spark danced beneath her fingers, and the mark sank deeper into the wood. Permanent. I'm staying, she said simply. If they come again, I'll be ready. Eli looked around at the small farm, the barn, the broken fence, the damaged generator, and smiled. Well, I was thinking of rebuilding anyway, he said. Could use a second pair of hands. Myra smiled, a real one this time. She walked toward the fence and began lifting the fallen boards. The light on her skin faded slowly, as if it was finally safe to rest. Weeks passed, and the sky stayed clear. No more humming in the clouds, no more invisible ships, no more threats in the night. People from the village began returning to Eli's doorstep, not to shout, but to ask questions, to wonder if she was still here. Some came just to watch from a distance, unsure if what they heard was true. They saw her hanging new boards, planting seeds, smiling when Eli told his old stories. She was no longer a mystery. She was part of the land now. One morning, a little girl approached the farm gate alone, clutching a broken toy in her hands. She looked up at Myra with big, nervous eyes. My hoverbird stopped working, she said. Papa said, you're magic. Mira knelt down and took the toy gently. With a flick of her fingers, the wings unfolded and lit up, humming softly. The girl's face lit with joy. "Thank you, miss," she whispered, then ran off giggling. Eli watched from the porch. Arms crossed, he looked at Mira, and she looked at him. "You didn't just clean me, Eli," she said, voice soft. "You gave me back something I didn't know I'd lost." "What's that?" he asked. She turned to face the sun, letting its warmth touch her skin. "A life," she said, "a real one, and for the first time since she crawled out of the mud." She felt clean. That night, Eli reinforced the barn doors with metal sheets, wired alarms across the fence, and kept his rifle within reach. But deep down, he knew none of that would matter when they came. They weren't dealing with thieves or animals. This was something else, silent, advanced, and cold. Mira sat outside in the dark, her bare feet resting on the old wooden steps. The stars shimmered above, but her eyes were fixed on the treetops. She hadn't said much after disabling the scout unit. She just whispered the same words over and over. "They're not afraid of me." Eli sat beside her, quiet. The night was unusually warm, yet a chill ran up his spine. He watched her face, tired, angry, sad, and knew she was preparing herself for something she never wanted to face. She wasn't running anymore. She was waiting. Then, without warning, every animal in the barn began to panic. Chickens screamed, horses kicked, dogs howled. Eli jumped to his feet just as the air above the farm cracked with soundless thunder. A shape emerged, sleek, black, and smooth. It didn't land, just hovered above the house like a spider made of light. A voice, deep and mechanical, boomed across the field. Not through speakers, but through every mind within hearing range. "Myro-class construct, prepare for retrieval." Eli held his breath as Myra stood slowly, her body pulsing faint blue again. She didn't scream or cry. She stepped forward, hands raised not to surrender, but to challenge. "You left me in a cage," she shouted back. "You thought I'd stay weak forever." The voice replied with no emotion. "You are unstable. Your presence is a risk." Myra clenched her fists, and the glowing marks along her arms lit up fully now, running from shoulder to fingertip. The barn lights exploded, the ground cracked slightly, and wind began to swirl unnaturally around her. She wasn't hiding her power anymore. Eli shielded his eyes as the blue light surged. Myra lifted her arms and spoke in a strange rhythm, words he didn't recognize. The ship above shifted, attempting to retreat, but she was faster. Energy snapped from her fingers like lightning. Striking the underside of the vessel, it shuddered, lost control, and crashed a few hundred meters away in the forest, vanishing in smoke and fire. Eli ran to her as she fell to her knees, breathing hard, skin dimming. "You didn't just disable it," he said, helping her up. "You destroyed it." Myra nodded weakly. "It was never about them capturing me again," she said. "It was about me choosing who I am." But even in victory, she looked hollow. She had used something powerful, and it had taken something from her too. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from what she now knew she was capable of. "They won't stop," she said quietly, leaning into Eli's shoulder. That was only the beginning. Eli looked toward the smoke, the stars, and the silence that followed. "Then we make sure we're ready," he whispered, "together." And in that moment, neither of them felt alone anymore.